everyone, it's 1 o'clock here on IC Radio. I'm Georgia.
And I'm Lottie. Welcome back to Science at 1, where we bring you the best science, news, gossip and analysis.
And all the best music. On our playlist today we have the Beatles, Carly Rae Jepsen and Troye Sivan.
And on the science menu, we are going to deep dive into the world of drugs.
We will talk about cognitive enhancers, caffeine, hallucinogens, and psychedelics.
Not only that, but we will get the latest news from the world of science.
All that and more coming up here on Science at 1.
I'm very excited for this show today. There's a lot to get stuck into.
Isn't there? I feel like this is such an interesting and broad topic. I mean, there's pretty ubiquitous drugs that most people encounter on the daily, all the way to drugs that maybe aren't on the right side of the law. It really can cover a broad range of topics. So I think we're going to have a lot to get into today.
It's very, very exciting. So let's get into it. So our first song today is Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by the Beatles.
Picture yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine trees and marmalade skies. Somebody calls you, you answer quite slowly. A girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Cellophane flowers of yellow and green towering over your head. Look for the girl with the sun in her eyes and she's gone. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Follow her down to a bridge by a fountain where rocking horse people eat marshmallow pies. Everyone smiles as you drift past the flowers that grow so incredibly high. Newspaper taxis appear on the shore, waiting to take you away. Lying in the back with your head in the clouds and you're gone. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Lucy in the sky with diamonds.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking right now. Talking.
Picture yourself on a train in a station with plasticine pauses with looking glass ties. Suddenly someone is there at the turnstile, the girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Lucy with diamonds. Lucy in the sky 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 with diamonds.
That was Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by the Beatles, a classic.
Absolutely. Joining us now is Lizzie, who is going to talk to us about some drugs that have been recently in the news.
Welcome, Lizzie.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I want to talk about something that is important for me as an American and as someone who thinks mental health is important. Recently in the news, RFK Jr. was confirmed to be head of Health and Human Services. unfortunately. And during this hearing, he was asked about his beliefs on SSRIs, and he claimed that people in his family had a harder time getting off SSRIs than heroin.
What?
Yeah. And, starting off the day with not a very fun anecdote, but I feel like it's important that we need to kind of debunk this idea that SSRIs and antidepressants are highly addictive and harmful, which is patently untrue. I want to sort of demystify what SSRIs are for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that we have the opportunity to do so. So I guess to start us off, maybe I'm wondering, how do SSRIs actually work? And in the vein of withdrawal, what about them is different from addictive drugs like heroin?
Yeah, so normally it's good to establish what the normal way a brain would process serotonin is, because the name SSRIs, if you don't know, stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It's a big chunk of words to basically say that when your brain is functioning normally, serotonin passes from one nerve to another through a synapse, and there's this serotonin that's kind of left floating around, and the nerves take the serotonin back up. But when you take an SSRI, they block these receptors that allow serotonin to get back in, and your brain thinks that you don't have very much serotonin, so it forces your brain to make more. Which is important because in depression, a lot of times people with depression have really low levels of serotonin. It increases the amount of serotonin in our brain. This is different from heroin or opiates because they're going to bind to opioid receptors, and they make the brain release a bunch of dopamine. These are completely different brain chemicals and completely different mechanisms for how these two drugs work.
Okay.
So they're different mechanisms, but how do they differ in terms of withdrawal then?
So, withdrawal is sort of this way of a body will get used to a specific chemical environment, and any shift in that can cause adverse effects. So in terms of when you're on SSRIs, your body gets really used to having a ton of serotonin in your body, and the withdrawal that you're experiencing is going to be getting used to having a lower amount of serotonin in your body. A big difference is that opioid addiction actually goes way beyond physical dependence on a substance. There's, substance abuse disorder. There's a specific mental reason that, you get behaviorally attached to these drugs. They cause a craving, they cause a high. There's a reward intrinsically that makes you want to go back to these drugs. And when I say makes you want to, it's not like you have a desire to go take heroin. It's more of you can't help yourself. And SSRIs just don't cause cravings or a high.
I see.
There's no sort of reward for it. There's no reward in our brains for taking an SSRI. It's just a change in our brain chemistry. And it can get much more complicated than that. But to sum it all up, there are completely different symptoms of withdrawal too.
Okay, yeah. That's really interesting. And thanks for coming in to tell us about that. Is there
Yeah,
anything
of course.
else that you think would be important for our listeners to know about this subject?
Yeah, I just want to, before wrapping up my little segment, I want to emphasize the importance of SSRIs in the treatment of depression and anxiety and mental health. They were a big help to me. In fact, I was on SSRIs for almost 9 years of my life. I went through withdrawal, and, I'm on a different type of antidepressant now. It's had radically changed the way that I live my life and that many people have. And it's important that we have people in our governments that acknowledge that. And so I want to remind people out there that it's okay to be dealing with mental health issues. And yeah,
absolutely. That's a good way to end it off.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lizzie. And we're going to go back to the music now, and we're going to go into Psychedelic Switch by Carly Rae Jepsen.
I think all my waking up in the euphoria. My insecurities are things I never was. I was a sad song before we met. But boy, your love is such a trip. It's like a psychedelic switch. Don't wake me 'cause I'm lucid dreaming, meditating on your lips. 'Cause baby, I'll be satisfied forever with a couple years of this. Make me feel like in my birthday suit with you, I'm putting on the Ritz. It's like a psychedelic switch. I'm in paradise. I never met anybody like you. I don't wanna hide when I'm with you. It's like I'm waking up in the euphoria. My insecurities are things I never was. It's like my whole life now is making sense. I'm on the wildest trip in this. It's like a psychedelic switch. Don't wake me 'cause I'm lucid dreaming, meditating on your lips. 'Cause baby, I'll be satisfied forever with a couple years of this. Make me feel like in my birthday suit with you, I'm putting on the Ritz. It's like a psychedelic switch. You feel just like home. I'm not scared to show you. You feel just like home. I'm not scared to show you. You feel just like home. I'm not scared to show you. And all my insecurities can't stand the way you look at me. You loving me, it's hard to resist. It's like a psychedelic switch. 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 Don't wake me 'cause I'm lucid dreaming, meditating on your lips. 'Cause baby, I'll be satisfied forever with a couple years of this. Make me feel like in my birthday suit with you, I'm putting on the Ritz. It's like a psychedelic switch. It's like a 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 it's like a
That was Psychedelic Switch by Carly Rae Jepsen.
Joining us now is Met, who is here to talk to us about cognitive enhancers. Welcome to the show, Met.
Hiya.
Woo!
So, you're here to talk to us about cognitive enhancers, but what actually are they?
So, cognitive enhancers, or nootropics, are a group of drugs which aim to provide some sort of improvement within your cognition. So this could be with your memory, with your attention, your executive functions, things like your reasoning or your inhibitory control. And so for that reason, they're often known as smart drugs to like the general public. But that term isn't always actually very helpful because a lot of cognitive enhancers can also refer to drugs which aim to restore cognitive function. So for example, in the cases of like Alzheimer's or if someone has a stroke.
Oh, so that's interesting. It seems like quite a broad category of drugs. What are some examples of these? I'd love to know.
Yeah, so as you've kind of mentioned already, it's quite a broad category. And that's because it's not actually a like defined term in the literature. So kind of anything can sort of fit in with it. So for example, ADHD medication like methylphenidate, antibodies which treats Alzheimer's and so restore some cognitive functions there. And even commonly consumed substances like nicotine and caffeine have been classified as cognitive enhancers.
Ooh, a caffeine does make me anxious, I have to say.
Yeah, and that's like often the issue with cognitive enhancers actually. So they'll improve cognition within one domain, but that often means your cognition will become worse in another. And that's especially true in healthy individuals who take cognitive enhancers like nicotine or methylphenidate, the ADHD drug.
So is that something that's like a big issue, really? Healthy individuals taking cognitive enhancers?
Yeah, so there's been a few studies, particularly just before COVID, and they found that like particularly university students, and I've seen some studies that actually talk about Imperial specifically.
What? Interesting.
So they've been finding that these university students who don't have ADHD have been taking ADHD medication, whether they get this from, you know, just online, some random pharmacy, or whether they're shipping it off from another country, or even diverting it from like a friend or a family member. They've been taking, there's just been increasing evidence that university students have been taking ADHD medication, which of course brings up a lot of like ethical questions. Like, is that cheating on your assignments?
I was gonna say.
Interesting.
Or like, you know, if you're diverting away medication from those who need it, like people who do have ADHD, like, is that going to become a problem? But also I think it also raises a bit more of a philosophical question of like, why are we as a society kind of being increasingly pushed towards prioritizing our grades and our productivity instead of a bit more of a holistic approach to our education where we kind of prioritize the general knowledge that's been gained?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, if individuals who don't need these kinds of drugs feel the maybe not physical but social need to be taking them, that is an interesting point. I wonder how institutions like Imperial, not to be on IC radio right now, I wonder how institutions like this one are approaching that. That's quite interesting.
They'll respond in some way. Maybe it will count as cheating one day.
There's
I
been
feel
some
like-
that have tried to ban like
but that
medication.
doesn't quite seem fair.
That doesn't seem
Yeah.
fair. Yeah.
Because I feel like there's also lots of people who maybe need it but don't have like an official
Yes, I was going to
Yeah.
say
prescription
that.
need
And
for
it's
it.
also like, how do you even enforce that at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Especially when caffeine and like nicotine are also classified as nootropics and smart drugs.
Yeah, I think there'd be riots on campus if they tried to get nicotine and caffeine, I imagine.
Well, that's super interesting. Thank you so much for coming on, Matt. And should we get back into some music?
I would love to.
Next up is Casual Drug Use by Katie Gavin.
She's got plastic flowers on her dashboard and her wardrobe in her trunk. I'm not sleeping tonight. I know, I did not need that last one. I'm Sante. I was apprehensive about taking this trip. Some days you do your best, some days you do what gets you out of bed.
That was one of my favorites, Casual Drug Use by Katie Gavin. You're listening to IC Radio, and this is Science at 1 with me, Georgia.
And me, Lottie. Still to come is the news, and we will learn a bit about psychedelics.
And we'll hear about an ubiquitous drug and how it impacts us on the daily.
So don't forget to get in touch with us. You can email us at science19@gmail.com. So that's 9 written as a number. So that's SCIENCEONE 9 the number @gmail.com.
Or if you're listening to us on YouTube, leave us a comment or message in the chat. We've already got some people who are talking a bit. A longtime listener, Lord Nubis, says, I don't know what RFK is talking about. The Kennedy family does not have a good history of treating mental health well. I am not the most versed on American history, but I think that rings true.
And we've got Daniel Riley who said, Lizzie fans stand up. Absolutely. Great segment by Lizzie earlier.
Yeah, I'm a Lizzie fan. I would stand up if it wouldn't mess
Me
with
too.
my mic right now.
Absolutely.
And another comment from one of our correspondents, Olivia Fisher, who says, yay, Ritalin gang. I think in response to this segment from Met. Woohoo!
Absolutely.
In the meantime, let's get back to another track before we get to our later segments. Here is Pristine by Snail Mail.
Pristine, untraced by the world outside you. Anyways, I'll never get
If it's not supposed to be, then I'll just let it be. And out of everyone, be honest with me. And who do you change for? Who's top of your world? And of everyone, who's your type of girl? And we can be anything, even apart. And of everything, it doesn't have to be this hard. I can be anyone, but I'm so entwined. And out of everyone is on your mind. And no more changes. I'll still love you the same.
That was Pristine by Snail Mail. Joining us now is our news correspondent, Sydney. Welcome, Sydney.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I always love to have you on, Sydney. So what? Today you are a news correspondent.
I am. Oh my gosh.
And I'm just dying to know, what news do you have for us today?
Oh, well, I hope I can meet your expectations then.
Always, I'm sure you will.
So, for the first bit of news today, scientists have recently created a compound that is very similar to cannabis's pain-relieving properties without getting the high associated with smoking weed.
Oh.
Yeah, so normally cannabis molecules bind to cannabinoid receptor 1, or CB1, sorry, I cannot pronounce that.
No.
And this
I'm not good on brains. really.
Yeah, no, neither am I with these long names. But what you do need to know about this receptor is that it's on nerve cells, which are found virtually all over the body, and they allow us to feel pain. So these receptors, normally cannabis affects all of them, and so they're able to cross the blood-brain barrier and affect these receptors that are found in the brain and give you that mind-altering effect, let's say.
Okay. Yeah.
So this new molecule is designed to be positively charged, which means that it is unable to cross the blood-brain barrier. It only binds to the CB1 receptors that are found in the body, so it only reduces pain kind of more locally, as opposed to giving you the high and giving you other side effects that are related to cannabis.
Fascinating. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So what else do you have in store for us today?
So I have a bit of genetic news for you, and it's oddly reminiscent of Jurassic Park. Yeah. But on a very micro scale, okay? So, so scientists have recently created woolly mice.
I have actually seen
Oh my
this
goodness.
news.
I can't believe you'd call this a micro scale. This is huge.
Well, I mean, mice are small, right? So mice have been genetically altered to have woolly coats similar to the woolly mammoth. So they have these coats that are thicker and coarser and more close in color to what a woolly mammoth would have. And they modified 7 genes related to hair texture and color in these mice. And they believe that they could eventually use this on Asian elephants, which are the closest living relative to the woolly mammoth.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is interesting because I'm usually pretty lukewarm on the whole de-extinction trend, to be honest. But I feel like woolly mice is kind of where I can get behind it. It's like a Highland cow, but a mouse.
Yeah, exactly. And they're really cute. I don't know if you've seen a picture. If you want to look up a picture.
This
They're
could be a
so
huge
fluffy.
new trend in household pets, I think.
Oh my God.
It's like if you
Fluffy
don't have
mouse.
enough responsibility to get a dog, maybe a woolly mouse
Yes.
will be good enough for you. Could be a good
Yeah.
first step.
All you have to do is just brush, take care of its coat.
Beautiful. So that was a great story. Do you have any other news?
Yeah, so I do have one last segment, and this one caught my attention because it's something I had never really considered until I saw this, and it's related to virtual reality.
Okay.
But scientists have found a way to transmit taste through a new device called the e-taste.
No way.
Yeah, so it's a way of trying to enhance like virtual reality. So it's so silly. You to me it's really silly sounding.
I'm on
Yeah.
the edge of my seat.
Yeah, in anticipation. So what you do is give this device some food or drink in the form of a liquid on something called its electric tongue.
No way.
I hate that
Yeah,
the
I
sound
know,
of that.
already
Weird.
disgusting. Already horrible. Okay, so it collects information on this food and drink and associates this information with various concentrations of 5 different taste compounds. And what it does is it uses this information to send it to a second component, which this component has this like layer of gel that can distribute these 5 edible compounds, and then pumps that into an outlet. In this case, the scientists were suggesting that maybe it would be like a straw, and it would go directly into the person's mouth to then simulate that taste that you put on the electric tongue. Terrible. I know, horrible. So by changing these concentrations and also where on the tongue it touches, you can replicate most tastes except for spiciness and fattiness for now.
Oh my god, my jaw's on the floor. Why would they want to do that?
You know, per this paper I was reading, apparently there's many applications, all of which you can take what you will about them. So
I'll hear it out.
So we can think about immersive gaming. You know, if you want to be more in the moment, maybe you're cooking something in the game and you can actually taste it, right? Whatever you're cooking.
Yeah.
Online shopping. So if you want to taste something before you buy it, in essence, that could be a pretty decent application.
But it has to be in a liquid form.
Yeah.
So you liquefy it. So you basically could like blend it.
I wish I hadn't had that thought. Go on.
I guess like any type of remote education that require you to eat something or taste something. I'm thinking like maybe culinary classes. If we're thinking like during like the pandemic, all that type of stuff was pretty hard. For weight management, that one I'm not really sure about. Truthfully, they didn't really go too much into detail about. Or sensory testing, or even physical rehabilitation.
Okay,
So
that's
there's-
interesting.
Yes, maybe a bit more of like a medical application in that sense.
I feel like the less recreational uses make me feel a little more like this could be a useful
Yeah.
thing.
But they were really pushing, at least in this paper that I was reading, that was pushing for more of like a commerce type
Oh, I was
side.
gonna say,
Of course
that's
they are.
And I'm-
corporate.
And I don't really know who would be buying this.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the future of technology. This is where we're moving to, where we're not leaving our houses to buy, like to eat things. We're just
it's like
eating.
it's like in WALL-E almost.
Yes.
all the shakes that they would drink instead of real food.
Also, you're not getting any of the texture, so you just because it's all liquefied.
It's a gel, yeah.
So I just think you're missing out on texture. What about crunchiness?
Yeah, exactly. You would be missing
It's
out on
not
quite a
for
lot of
me.
things.
I see a
Yeah.
comment in the chat saying, "Can't wait to be able to play the 2033 re-release of Skyrim with an electric tongue, so I can taste the 50 cheese wheels I stole." That's a good way. Thank you, Lord
Fantastic.
Nubis, longtime commenter as well.
Fantastic application right
Yeah.
there.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm very curious to see where this goes, and thank you for cluing us in.
Yeah, of
Now,
course.
thank you very much, Sydney. That is all we have for the news today. So let's get back to the music. Our next song is Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. That was Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix.
So, I was thinking earlier, obviously today we're talking about drugs, and I was thinking, well, caffeine is a drug.
Oh, yeah, I suppose it is.
Yeah, and lots of us have caffeine every day, I would say, multiple times a day. So I was thinking earlier on the train in, I was like, how many people on the planet had a coffee this morning? Probably quite a lot. Did you have a coffee this morning?
Actually, interestingly, I didn't. I usually do have a cup of tea with milk and honey. Sorry to offend any tea purists, but
Yeah.
I was in a bit of a rush today, so I didn't have a cup of tea. So I might be going against your stat with, did people have a coffee this morning?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people do, and I think it can have a lot of. And people often think they have a lot of sort of negative effects as well as positive effects. But people obviously like it, kickstart their morning with a cup of tea or coffee, and caffeine is a natural substance in coffee, tea, soft drinks, and of course, energy drinks.
Of course.
Monsters, Red Bull,
What's your-
others are
what's your-
available. I just realised
What
that.
would be your energy drink of choice, Lottie?
You know what? I've actually never drunk an energy drink.
Me neither.
So I was worried. I was like, am I like the only one? But
No, my sister's really into them.
yeah,
But-
I know of people around us now that,
Yeah.
that do like energy drinks. And in fact, it is the world's most consumed legal drug. And I think we all have our own experiences with caffeine as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's, drinking too much coffee and getting the shakes. That's what I get the shakes. And it affects my stomach as well. Or, drinking a Red Bull, trying to do an all-nighter for a uni assignment. I think we can all relate to those sort of experiences.
Yeah. But I guess you've looked into this a bit. Is caffeine good for you?
Well, so I did a bit of brief research here on the way here. And the answer really is, as I think with a lot of things, it comes down to moderation.
Of course.
I think, as lots of people always say, too much of anything. I think that's Cheryl Cole actually. Too much of anything can make you sick. I don't get the research from that song, but yes. So if you drink too much caffeine, there is a possible health risk, but in moderation, there's no health risk. So, and actually, coffee has a lot of antioxidants in it. And that can actually protect heart health. So that's a positive rather than just a neutral effect.
Yes. So I guess what would be in cups of coffee, something that's tangible to me, what would be an amount of coffee that would be considered moderate?
Yeah, so the safe daily limit, so the moderate amount, is around 400 milligrams. So that's around 4 to 5 cups a day. So if you're under 4 to 5 cups a day, you're fine.
Oh.
You're not going to have any major health effects of that.
Brilliant.
But if you're going over, actually a lot over, you might want to be a bit concerned. You might end up having headaches or increased anxiety. And actually, if you're pregnant, I researched, or breastfeeding, you should have half that recommended amount, so 200 milligrams.
Okay.
So that's just a heads up.
Well, 4 to 5 cups a day is a relief to hear from me, because I don't really tend to get that close to it. But I'll keep that in mind going forward. Now let's get back into the music. Our next song is a topical one. It is called Caffeine, and it is by Lizzie Esau.
I waste all my days, I waste all my time, it's a problem. Thinking about the strawberry coloured shade. Every time you blush, get my words all stuck in my mouth. Always in my head from such a young age. The quicker I ran out this time, the better, but I stayed. I don't know how I stumbled into falling into place. We think the same, it's kinda strange. Taking the sea is the face in the way. On an empty shore in the rain. Yeah, that's what it feels like if you wanna know why. Sunrise warm in my eyes on a soft July day. Like the caffeine that keeps me awake. Yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels, yeah. I waste all my days, I waste all my time, it's a problem. Thinking about the burgundy of rage on everybody's face when I said that we were hanging about. Always in my head from such a weird phase. You were never right for me, but one day I just caved. Then look what happened to the rain, the sun again. It's kinda feels, that's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, that's how it feels. I just hope you know that I always ignored them. Nah, I never listened enough. They are proving all the time that I was always right, yeah. And I know how it feels, that's how it feels. The sunrise in my eyes. That's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels. That's how it feels, yeah, that's how it feels, yeah. Taking the seat as the face away on an empty shore. Yeah, that's what it feels like. No way. Sunrise warming my eyes on a soft July.
That was Caffeine by Lizzie Asau.
Joining us now is Maddie. Welcome, Maddie.
Thanks for having me.
So I hear today you're here to talk to us about some common foods that have psychoactive properties.
Yeah, so there's actually a wide variety of foods that, even in their usual intake range, have known effects on our minds. So you probably have heard that there's like a variety of spices, particularly, including vanilla, black pepper, chili peppers, saffron, ginger, nutmeg, turmeric. But if we go like kind of more specifically, there's some that, you know, are even more common that we kind of experience. And one of them actually would be hot peppers. I think it's maybe one that our listeners know a little bit more about or maybe have experienced.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they're really interesting because our bodies aren't actually reacting just to the vegetable, like they're actually reacting to the effects that it has on us. So
when we eat a hot pepper.
Yeah, exactly. So when you eat a hot pepper, your body's reacting to the heat. And so when you consume something hot, your body registers that as pain, right? Mm-hmm. And so you end up releasing endorphins, and obviously these are feel-good chemicals. So this rush is what people often find is causing them to feel euphoria.
Oh, like a pepper high instead of a runner's high.
Exactly, yeah. And also, peppers are interesting because they do belong to the same botanical family as tobacco and nightshade, actually.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's a real range.
But we haven't seen like crazy like impacts, I think, at this point, but we do know obviously like properties like similar to tobacco and stuff can have effects on your mind. So
okay, so it seems it's not just the heat and endorphins. There's other chemicals at play as well.
Yes. So I feel like I'm gonna mispronounce this, so I'm gonna try my absolute best. But capsaicin.
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it, if I remember correctly. But essentially, it's responsible for the pepper's heat, and it's actually what we would say it attributes like these effects. So it's not really the pepper itself, it's the seeds, which I think a lot of people kind of have an idea for that.
Interesting. So I hear there's a rumor that nutmeg can also be psychoactive.
Yeah, it's funny, we were actually talking about this outside in the studio earlier. Some people came up to me and were asking me about this. It's actually psychoactive in the right doses, but it's really hard because you actually would have to consume between 5 to 15 grams of it, which is like 2 tablespoons or like 2 seeds, which doesn't seem that bad, but the effects take hours to set in, so like 3 to 6 hours, and it's described as often having people feel like they're stoned or drunk.
Whoa.
But you could also get like nausea and red eyes. but it's really
risky.
hard to ingest it in those quantities. So that doesn't sound like that much, but I don't think the average person's really having that much nutmeg. To be honest, I've never tried to have that much. I feel like it might go across a bit like the cinnamon challenge that I was
I was
through.
just about to say, it's
Yeah.
like a more extreme outcome of the cinnamon challenge.
Exactly. So I think people generally can't really try that. So there is the risk of overdosing, but to get to that point might be a little bit, might be more for the thrill seekers out there.
And are there any other foods that cause these weird effects?
Yeah, so there's actually a couple that have like historical documents. So one of them is the specific type of fish, which is sea bream. So that's actually like a Mediterranean variety of fish. And essentially, if this fish has consumed enough like of a certain algae, it's actually toxic because these toxins can build up, and especially in their heads, which is like what gets eaten a lot of the time with these fish.
Oh.
And actually, historically, the Romans were known to eat this fish to have a high.
Oh, so intentionally?
Yeah, so actually in Arabic, they call it the fish that makes streams.
Ooh, that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you have any other interesting stories from different foods?
Yeah, so to finish today, one thing I wanted to talk about, partly because I feel like it's something that is pretty, like maybe a staple of some people's households, is rye bread.
Oh, yeah, I have that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But what you do have to be careful of is sometimes I think people don't really mind if bread goes moldy and stuff.
Oh, I definitely mind.
Well, I mean, like, they
Me
cut
too,
it
I was
off, but,
gonna
like,
say.
the bacteria is obviously still building up. But essentially, rye bread in particular has a fungus that grows on it called ergot, which contains ergotamine, which is a precursor to lysergic acid, which is the main component of LSD. So if you ingest it, you'll actually have similar symptoms to LSD. And actually, there's been historical outbreaks of this type of poisoning that's linked to weird occurrences like the Salem witch trials. So, so those who consumed this moldy bread experienced intense convulsions, hallucinations. So, it's kind of unpredictable, some of these things. And, I think the risks are quite low generally, but it can still, pop up here and there. So
Yeah, it's good to know so we
be
can be
mindful.
cautious.
Yeah, I mean, you probably won't overdose, but if you ever feel a bit weird, maybe look up to see if there's something a little funky with that
Absolutely.
food.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in to tell us all about these weird psychoactive foods, Maddie.
So moving on to small music, our next track is Rush by Troye Sivan.
Big communication, tell me what you want. Translate your vibration, let your body talk to me, baby love. If you wanna show me why you've been scheming up, if you wanna.
That was Rush by Troye Sivan.
For our last segment today, we are joined by Tiernan to talk about psychedelics. Welcome, Tiernan.
Hey-o, how's it going? How are we doing?
Pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so
And
much.
the weather is so much better.
You brought the weather with you.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
really,
I know.
that
Save the
Irish
best for last
weather,
in situation.
famously.
Famously very sunny in Ireland, yeah. But yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about psychedelics. But before I do that, I think I should start a little bit with how drugs are generally classified, specifically recreational drugs. So do either of you know what the most common recreational drug is? Any ideas? Any
I
guesses?
mean, in the chat, we've had people claiming that
Yeah.
it's sugar, but I think...
Oh, recreational, though. Is that recreational?
I think this is a whole other debate
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
get to another time. I would say marijuana.
Marijuana, okay. And Lottie, what do you
I
think?
probably agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you would be, I mean, I guess from Canada, it's probably a little bit more common than what it is here in the UK. But actually, the most common recreational drug is alcohol.
Oh,
Of course.
So
I just said that as well.
Yeah, I know. So that is the most it's the most common, and it's followed soon, quickly after by tobacco, and
Yeah.
then in third place that is cannabis. So it's very close, but almost. Alcohol is known as a depressant, and a depressant, that's one of the categories that make up recreational drugs. So recreational drugs are commonly divided into three categories. You have your depressants. They are the drugs that induce sort of a feeling of relaxation, feeling of calmness. You have stimulants. Those are drugs that induce a sense of energy and alertness. And you also have your hallucinogens. So drugs that they induce a sort of perpetual distortion, such as hallucinations. Sort of they change how you're processing information. They sort of give the user this sense of like otherworldly kind of presence. It's sort of like
Right.
out-of-body experiences and stuff.
Interesting. Oh, I never knew you had to categorize them like that.
Well, yeah, there's so many drugs out there on the market, both legally and illegally, that it just massively helps with managing their identities and what each and every single one does. So alcohol and things like benzodiazepines, they're classified as depressants. They inhibit the activity of the nervous system through chemical and biological processes. Things like cocaine or amphetamines, or even caffeine that you guys were talking about earlier, that's a stimulant. And that's a class of drug that it increases alertness. But the third one, and I think it's one of the more interesting ones, is hallucinogens. And those are things like magic mushrooms and LSD.
Right. Okay, interesting. So, thinking of our guesses earlier, which one of these does cannabis fall under?
Very good question. So cannabis is a different kind of... It has its own little category. It's its own special thing, kind of. It gets a special sort of type of classification. It's either its own... Some people categorize it as its own thing, or they classify it as a mild psychedelic. So the active chemical compound in cannabis is THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. And many of the sort of... it exhibits a lot of the depressive effects, such as muscle relaxation, sedation, and sort of tiredness.
So when do people start taking these drugs?
So hallucinogens and psychedelics like LSD, their active ingredient is psilocybin. And you also have things like MDMA, which have been associated with things like counterculture and recreational use. But in recent years, scientists have been uncovering their potential to revolutionize mental health treatment and how we understand the brain works. So this was big news actually recently, last summer, whenever scientists found a new breed of psilocybin mushroom.
Oh, so what's such the big deal about these mushrooms?
Well, they can be used a lot in medicine. So historically, back in the 60s, psilocybin was hailed as sort of by psychologists as a wonder drug, a sort of cure-all for mental health. But then whenever the war on drugs was declared in the 70s, the study for these compounds was all like it was banned and cancelled, and a lot of academic institutions had to basically flat out stop using it because it was illegal. But recently, as of 2022, there's a lot more work being done.
Interesting. So we're starting with where we left off then.
Yeah, exactly, and more. So studies at institutions like Johns Hopkins and even here at Imperial have shown that psilocybin, has shown that psilocybin, the active compound, can reduce symptoms of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, often in just 1 or 2 sessions.
Wow.
Similarly, like MDMA, commonly known as ecstasy or Molly, is in phase 3 clinical trials at the minute for treating PTSD, and it has actually some hopeful results.
How would that work?
So it's the processes are still under investigation, but the leading hypothesis is due to what's called neuroplasticity. So that's how the brain forms new neural links. So it's not like neurogenesis, that no neurons are being created. It's sort of rewiring the brain.
Interesting. So how does that work? What does that do then?
Well, it provides the ability to shift and process your environment and think about things in a different way. And traditionally, hallucinogens, they had been commonly used in religious or shamanic rituals. And so in that context, they're referred to as entheogens, and they're used to facilitate healing and divination and communication and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Tin, and that was really interesting. And thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so I guess that's about it. That's our show. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back this time next week for Germ Week, our new theme.
And don't forget to let us know what you think of the show or ask us any questions in the YouTube comment section or email us.
That's right. Our email address is science19@gmail.com. That's science19@gmail.com.
And a big thanks to everyone who came on our show today.
And special shout out to our producer Mohammed in the booth.
Until next time, I'm Lottie.
And I'm Georgia. This has been Science at 1.
See you next week.